Hi, everyone. It's Michelle Howe. Today, I am interviewing a very special woman, and I wanted to bring that information to our community at Empath Evolution. I'm going to read a little bit about Zahara so you know who she is. Besides the lovely woman in the screen that you can see, Zahara was gifted her name following a vision of pyramids and subsequent journey in Bosnia. The name means flowering in light. Her ascended family of light told her that her name was not for her, it was to assist all to resonate and shine, to flower in light. Since a child, Zahara had past life memories of being in service to light and has been gifted with being in contact with divine beings and lighter dimensions. As a child, she had an out of body experience finding herself at the gates of heaven, divine source, and chose to continue her life in this body. This soul remembering is a call to assist all of us to embrace and embody being held divinely with our soul, free will to choose the highest intention. Just as shamans of old created flutes from the bones of sea eagles, Zahara is a hollow bone, sounding ancient in new ways to assist those called to evolve. Last year, she moved to Wales and the gateway lands of the Golden Dragon and Crystalline waters to assist with light grid keeping and temple awakening with Gaia. As an embodied galactic being, Zahara loves to birth creations of beauty, light, and love through her sacred visionary art, sound, light, language, and divine communications, reflecting and celebrating the divine beauty in all. So, with that introduction,
That's a
welcome.
lot. Well,
Welcome,
thank
welcome.
you.
Yes. I know that we have a lot to discuss. I know I have a lot of questions on my behalf and on the behalf of the viewers, which I know pretty well. Um, and I know you do a lot of different things. So we may end up going a little longer. We may end up doing a follow up to this, but I wanted to bring the attention of whoever's listening to this that at the end of the day, you're here because you feel your awakening vibrations are important, right? Um, Whenever I work with people, or Zahara for that matter, works with people, the energy part of this, the energy exchanges are very, very important. So if you're tired afterwards, know that you're integrating vibrations. Your body needs time to integrate information. It's one thing for the mind to get information, but for the body to integrate that, which is what we're all doing, is we're to embody higher vibrations. We're clearing the heavier, denser vibrations. We're learning, we're recalling, we're remembering. That's during these interviews, that is actually also happening. So that you know that. And both Zahara and I are here to assist with what that means and to open these channels up, which can be confusing. So certainly reach out to whoever resonates or however it resonates and whenever it resonates. Okay. So if something doesn't resonate, leave it and continue on listening. There's not a right or a wrong way. There's just a conversation that I'm going to have today. We're going to explore different topics and see how she has done her journey. And I think she has some great things to share today. So, Zahara, your website is zaharacelestial.com, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. I can see you do lots of different things. What stands out, the light language sounding activation. I thought that's right. When you are highly attuned to feeling and sensing and awakening, that is such a gift, an easy way, easier, simple way actually to move forward in the world. Can you tell me a little bit about this activation and how that helps people?
I would like to
Sure.
illustrate and then speak
Sure.
about it. So I am going to speak English and we'll have a conversation. But we take a breath. Muy asian moke, Noya sano, moyaniaka, moyanei. At good ay, tukutikatatatkan, good ay, tukutikata, naro, just a little bit there.
Ooh,
I won't go on further. But
I've got tears in my eyes. Well,
yeah,
I do. The sounding is very important for empaths. I don't know that they all realize that, or for people in general, because you can tune into what that means, and you won't really. It's not logical. It's not logical at all.
no. It's the vibration, the resonance, it's the heart intelligence. We when we speak, we are feeling that the intention, the emotion, the different layers that within and beyond the words that we're speaking. And so light language is embracing that. And so, for instance, when people have a stammer, when they sing, they don't stammer. And so, very much light language is accessing different parts of our brain. It's activating, as in bringing in higher vibrational energies and communications that really are our soul and our heart singing, resonating in. I've one time I went to Glastonbury tour, and my guide, my family of light, said you need to do some sounding now, some light language sounding, and I'm like, no, 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 this is not the good time. There's lots of tourists. I could feel that they were sort of tourists and not sort of the spiritual people who might get what I was doing. I'm like, I don't want to do it now. And there's a lot of them. They're kind of coming in a coach with their cameras flashing, and I don't want to do any sounding. And they're like, you need to do some sounding. So I start sounding in the tower that's on top of Glastonbury, and it builds a sound. And when I toned it down here because we're on Zoom, but I can get quite operatic. So I'm like doing this thing, and one man goes, well, who does she think she is? Some kind of opera singer. Anyway, I then do complete, and I then walk out. And this one lady comes up to me and she says, I've never heard anything like it. I felt it in my body. I started crying. I've been crying. It touched me really, really deeply. What was it? What you were doing? And then I said, it's called light language. It's language of love. It's more than language. It's divine resonance. It's channeling. It's what you can call it, channeling. And yes, and when I feel it, I'm in collaboration. I'm allow myself to be gifted whatever is flowing through me. And in the past, people have said, can you interpret? Can you tell me what that means, what you've just sounded? They wanted to know and understand from their head. And I always say to that is, because it comes from a high vibration, it's vast. A lot of information is contained in it, but it has to be condensed to come down. Because it's from a higher vibration, it will be faster and be vast. And then it gets condensed and condensed to come down into the physical and then come through me. Now, if I was to press pause, if I was like the old days videos or DVDs, I suppose, if you press pause, every second would be like a massive library of information. So I have done that in the past where I've done that. I've channeled something and I've pressed pause. I've done it on a live once just to see what it was like. And I pressed pause and I got, this is what was being conveyed. It was exhausting. It was really hard going for me. So you don't need to understand in the head. Your body and your heart and soul understands, and it's vast. Okay, there we go.
You tell me things that I know, but I don't did you put that into words. Yeah.
Wow,
And
wow.
sometimes being on this path, you don't always understand immediately what something is about. It takes you time to either run into a person that can explain it, or finally another piece comes in and you're like, oh, that's what that was. So, um, what I find is that a lot of times we're afraid of what we don't understand. And if we let that fear can close the door and even block us from experiencing something. And when the time comes and we're ready, we're going to open the door, right? So we can't force ourselves, but it's good to know that sometimes we are just not ready yet. Some people are not ready and they never will be while they're here, ready to hear or understand. The door is closed. So if the door is closed, as long as you yourself are comfortable with what you're doing, the problem is we want other people to accompany us. We want validation. We want to know that we're doing everything right, right? We may not get that from people outside of our circle. We need to be comfortable with something is within us. So I before that we did this interview, we talked a little bit about what's normal and what's not normal. And someone that's awakening, someone that's feeling more and awakening and struggling to kind of make sense of their life, of themselves and the world. How do how does one, because we probably should start at the beginning, but I kind of jumped into this. How do you see the evolution of humanity and people? I mean, when you first came here, you were, I want to say, awake, meaning you didn't fit the norm. You weren't, tell me a little bit more about where you started. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that will probably because this is
Yeah.
a vast subject, isn't it?
Yeah.
So to get to what my journey, which you beautifully put, I was aware that I was not functioning in the same way as my family. To such an extent, I would keep going to my parents and saying, "I'm adopted. I'm not. You're not my parents." I had past life memories.
Mm.
I saw people who spirits and beings. Um, so I knew others around me didn't have that experience. And then I was also brought up in a very traumatized thing and by traumatized parents, so traumatizing would come under severe mental health, a lot of violence, addiction, uh, dis-ease. I was homeless as a child. I mean, everything, just what you can think of, everything really. And because of that, I came out of my body. My consciousness was like, this is just too much. I literally, I would be I was very dissociated as a child. I would cover the mirrors up because I would look at the mirror and I would see someone else looking back at me, and I was just in shock a lot. And so that shock took me out of my body. My consciousness says, I don't want to be here. And so then I was just lying down I don't know, 8, 9. And I then was with all this light and the clouds. And I remember in my child's human mind going, wow, it's just like those films, like Moses and, oh, this is God and must be heaven. And there was this profound understanding that everything is held with divine. Everything is held within divine. Now, I know our brain can get a bit confused around all that because then why is there all atrocities, and there's always that debate goes on. So I'm not going to go there with that. But I had that experience, and then I realized I could choose. If I kept going up, I would die. And I wasn't in fear. I just like, I don't want to die now. I actually want to live. So that was one really, really important choice and awareness. And it happened because things actually got deteriorated and got worse. So I had that light awareness that carried me. And then, yeah, things got worse. I was homeless at one point, which I kind of didn't choose. Well, you can start looking at what we do choose. Our soul puts us here and says, okay, experience this for a divine reason. And I then realized that I could see and perceive other people's trauma very easily. I literally could see, very telepathic, very intuitive. I could. It wasn't so much their emotions, because there's often, I know you were very interested in the whole empathy but I could actually visually see. I would get flashes of sort of clairvoyance, flashes of what had happened to them. I could also get a sense of what they were thinking, feel what was blocking in their body. I have all the clairs activated. And I moved to London, and I had like overload, information overload. I remember getting on the tube for the first time, and I looked at and I could see what was going on. I'm like, this is just too much information. But it was a lot of trauma. And so I dialed down my clairs, my clairvoyance, my sentience.
I want to hear you dialed down your clairs.
Yes.
How did you know how to do that? Or what did you do to do that?
I said, I literally made it. I stated it. There's various places in my life where I've proclaimed things, I've stated things. So I said, I don't want to see, sense, feel, know any of it. I don't. I just went, blinkers, enough. I can't do it. No. I did it very successfully. I dialed down, not totally, because I was very open. So my dialing down is still quiet. I realized later on from a supervisor, healer, teacher. Oh goodness, my dialing down was still quite sensitive, or very sensitive. So it was good. I needed to do that to function. We'd had this conversation before. I needed to do that because I was bumping up against so much dysfunctionality, so much trauma. So we've had this conversation before, that I feel, in my experience, when you're an empath and you're having issues being in the world, it's because the world's got the issue and not you. Being empathic is our natural state of being. Is when we're, being open and sensitive is our natural healthy state of being. What is unhealthy and unhelpful is the environment that we've been in, the world you can call patriarchy, the hologram, the inverted matrix. There's all these titles that people use. Any traumatic environment, dysfunctionality, codependency, I can go on, mental dis-ease. So if you're sensitive, you'll be picking this up.
Welcome to being human. Being
exactly.
human in a body it's a total setup for dysfunction, because we're always looking out at the world. People are not sensing, and they're not using their senses. They're using their logical mind. Their parents are telling them what they thought before. Like, there's generations of being closed brought forward. And then we're rearing kids in the same way, or you want to rear them. But now the kids that are being born, some of them can be very open. And it's very painful to be that open, because you care a lot and you see suffering and what somebody says versus what they do, versus what they expect you to do, or they blame you for not doing. Like, if you're trying to fix the world, you're going to have a really hard time.
So that's, for me, the difference is trying to fix the world is not. in a way, I feel we haven't got enough words or language to describe what actually is happening with the human evolution. Because I feel you can be empathic and not need to or want to fix somebody else, and therefore you don't take on somebody else's stuff or emotions. But we're very much in the codependency where it's enmeshment. For me, the 3D, the patriarchy, capitalism, is a dense vibration. It's a resonance, a reality, which is very condensed, trapped, stuck, compressed. And when that happens, thoughts, emotions get all knotted up. We don't know whose thought is whose emotions is whose. We think caring is about control or trying to fix someone or rescue someone.
Yeah, think about the male energy, the feminine versus the male energy wants to fix, wants to resolve, wants a resolution, is action oriented. The feminine energy is a little more discerning. It's not going to act, it's going to feel what's most appropriate. It's going to be. So it's kind of like we were trapped in patriarchy, too polarized on one end of the logic, action, do mentality versus the love, the love and the being and the nurturing side of life, which we probably needed the patriarchy to survive some harsh realities in life. Around in the history, we needed that to a degree, but at the price of what? Of feeling and caring. And I don't know, these are just traits that are so important. Like you have to have an open heart. You have to feel and care. Because if you don't feel and care, you will act in any given way that is not, it doesn't include soul. It's just a very blatant, insensitive approach to life. But
As a way of coping when had been hurt or and severely hurt, traumatized. It's a
yes,
way of functioning, like you say. We numb ourselves. We have this whole self-medicating. People talk about self-medicating, using alcohol to numb, to dial down. So I dialed down my chakras. I didn't go drinking. So I was self-aware and I was awake enough to know, okay, I can consciously dial them down. And then my next step was I'm now going to go into therapy to then release the trauma.
okay,
So I was very conscious of what I was doing, what I needed to do to heal, to clear. So I wasn't carrying all this stuff. So then I could be a sensitive being. It doesn't mean that I wasn't uncaring. It just meant that I didn't want all this information.
right,
Um,
right.
I
Because
couldn't handle.
it was bombarding you and you were already wounded. You did not need the
Yeah,
external.
so
Yeah,
yeah, when we're resonating, we will be then calling that energy to us. So because I had this unresolved, and people call it the shadow, the trauma unresolved that was held in my body, and some of it was pre-verbal, so that's why it was held in my body. Um, I I needed to go on a journey to release all that, have a voice,
mhm,
because there's a lot of gifts that are held within these aspects, these because this, um, in psychotherapy, because I trained in child psychotherapy and I saw children psychotherapeutically, and so they have a dissociation, which shamanically is called, soul loss. Parts of ourself go missing. That's what we're talking about, the numbing and the dialing down. When we don't feel, so we're desensitized. When I was in social work, child protection, there was a lot of talk about children being resilient, and that used to get me very agitated. it was like, yeah, this child is becoming more and more resilient. I'm like, and that, okay, in one way that's good because they are going back into that dysfunctional family, or they're still in that dysfunctional family. So in the Western capitalist function, that child needs to be more resilient. But on a bigger picture or another perspective, I was thinking, okay, I understand they're going back there, so they need to be resilient. However, there's loss there. There's loss there. And I just felt that conflict, and I felt it deeply in my heart. And there's people around me I knew wouldn't understand. There was so much in the social work area that people around me were. I knew they would not understand my perspective. So I just kept quiet.
Yeah.
Until then, I just had enough of the whole thing, and I moved on. But yeah, it's. I think for me, being a sensitive being working in child protection, I laugh because it was like,
Ironic. You wanted to help. You wanted to help.
yeah, it was because I was still clearing my own wounding,
Yeah.
and then when I cleared my own trauma enough, I then saw the dysfunctionality of that system,
Yeah.
and I didn't have the desire to remain there. And it was part of me is wanting to rescue my child,
Yeah.
my inner child.
Yeah.
But also, I needed to understand, have the experience of how we are all functioning. You know, there are people there that want to help, but the system ain't.
Not set up for that. It's not.
No. um yeah, so that was interesting. So I throughout my life I've been drawn to
Help
wanting
others.
to help heal.
Yeah, very empathic. Tell me about your own, the clearing of your own trauma, the healing of your own trauma. How did that work for you? How did you approach it?
um I was drawn to Carl Jung. I
Yes.
loved his work on alchemy. I asked around because I went to art college, and that's why I was drawn to Jung, because people were sort of exploring philosophy and spirituality and psychology there, though the college was more into Freud. So I ended up, it's so funny. I went to a college, an art college, that wasn't, that you could move and do different forms of art, because all the other art colleges you would have to be fixed,
Oh,
not just painting or sculpture, but a particular style. And I wanted to be free.
yeah.
But that college, yeah, Freud was in and Jung was out. Anyway, I found what I thought was a Jungian psychotherapist, but she ended up being more Freudian. But that was all I could handle at the time, I think. I then I did different modalities over time. It took time. So Qigong, Tai Chi, Jung, psychotherapy. Um, then I explored shamanism, and I think that's it. Yeah, lots of different meditation. Went on a long journey. Um,
Is there, what would you recommend to someone who is starting on that journey today? I mean, I want to say we all have different tools and different things that we explore and look at. But and I know from my own journey, I went down several different rabbit holes at different points that didn't that taught me things. But if I'm trying to expedite and help my client, what are some key things that I like to teach them to have and to move through things so that they are successful for the most part? I still think it's going to take time, but The thing is, everyone is different. Yeah.
Yeah, the main thing is when you have trauma, what I've been just talking about is soul loss or shock.
Yeah.
Parts of ourselves leave our body, or we become dissociated. We're not grounded. We're not embodied. We don't want to think. We don't want to feel. And there's a lot of that going around more than people are aware of. It's been normalized to get drunk, to drink, you know, to get out of one's head, so to get back in the body is a main thing. Even being aware that that is a key component, that's the issue. So anything that allows us to feel through the body, be embodied, and we call it grounding, to be grounded, to be connected. So there are meditations that's called grounding meditation. Mindfulness is all about this. Mindfulness is all about grounding, being in the body and being in the now present moment. Because when you're dissociated, you're not present, you're not alert, you want to be elsewhere, you want to space out, you probably some anxiety, depression, you might be stuck in a loop of the past, or then you want to forget all the past. So you're not in the now moment. So anything that like walking, yoga, massage. There's a lot about breath work, because all this is anchored by the breath work. There's something that's called the body scan. I highly recommend it. You can. It's called a body scan. It's mindfulness. And it comes from actually Kundalini yoga. When you do Kundalini yoga, after you do a set of, they call them kriyas, which are different movements. Kundalini yoga is different from all the other different yogas, and I've done a lot. But when you've done the different movements, you then do this body scan, where you are aware of what you are feeling in your body, but you're not full up in your head with lots of thoughts. You're very present in the now moment, and you feel what you are present with in your body. You are embodied. So number one, getting back in your body. I actually, the latter part, I went to see a body psychotherapist, because a lot of trauma, the most dense trauma, the most like severe, chronic, is held in the body. It's not held in the mind. Because you think we're actually more human body, and emotion is meant to move through the body. We feel something, we then let it go. But when we have a trauma, we have a reaction which is of a fear, for instance, grief, upset. If that emotion is not held, if we don't feel safe, if the situation keeps on reoccurring, the emotion doesn't flow through. It gets locked in, trapped in energetically into the body, into the cells of the body. And so anything we can do to help move that trapped emotion. Shamanism is very good for that. It's all about, a lot of people do a lot of shamanic work, which soul retrieval work, to access those parts that are locked in the body, and that uses our mind. It uses imagination. That's a whole vast area, but I'm just going to drop that in.
Yeah.
Another thing is when we've experienced violence, trauma, a shock, pain, hurt, it's violent. That is harshness. And a lot of us would have experienced that as a child, but especially during childhood, we will, like, it has a vibration, it's opposite to love, and we will often think we're to blame for that happening.
Yeah.
And so we then hold a lack of love for ourselves. So a main number two is tuning into, and even saying this, do you love yourself? It's like, what? That sounds like really weird. What, you selfish? It's such a distorted, being distorted, that it kind of, I don't know what you mean. but but I know if I am in a fear state or I'm angry, it's harsh, it's cold, it's rigid,
Mm-hmm.
it's, it can be ruthless. It's not soft, it's not gentle, and it's not loving. And if we keep having thoughts that are not loving, that has a powerful effect on us, physically, emotionally, psychologically, mentally.
It
And
hardens
so,
us. We become hard.
yeah, hard. And it's like frozen hearted. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way.
Yeah.
And it's about opening up the heart.
Yeah.
Another thing, chakra work. I have worked with chakras for, that's a huge part of a path of working. And you can, I've got this wonderful book, Eastern Body, Western Mind.
Yep.
I highly recommend, if you, anybody watching this, of as an struggling with being empathic, or had trauma, or suspects they might have had something, they can't remember whole chunks of their childhood, any, or they've got any dis-ease emotionally in the mind or in the body, and they're curious or want to know about chakras, that is my number one book to recommend. If I was going to recommend any book, I can't remember her name because I'm dyslexic, but I have read it. I don't read a lot. And that, when I was training in healing, I was referencing that. It's just awesome, because certain trauma will be locked in at specific chakras.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
So
another vast area. Get the book.
let's talk a little bit about, I told you I have clients. A lot of my clients are coming up with the fact that they are actually dyslexic. Their mind works in a very different way than traditional linear, but I guess I want you to define what you think dyslexic is and how you've managed with that and actually used that, adjusted to that mind to live in this world and be helpful to others.
Oh, cool question. Uh, Being the age I am, the schools, I went to about 7 schools, moved around a lot. That didn't help my learning experience. They didn't have this whole approach to supporting, assisting children who had learning disabilities or whatever's, which dyslexia would come under. So that was challenging. But I very quickly, well, not very well, it feels quite quick, but I over in my childhood realized, when I would have conversations with people, I would leap from A to Z to J to M to N, and they would be going A, B, C, D, E in their linear conversation. I'd be going all over the shop, and I would be hearing and sensing, and it all makes sense to me because I'm very multidimensional. For me, being dyslexic is a multidimensional mind.
Yeah.
But if you've had trauma, that then causes the dysfunction in a way. Because in another culture setting, I suggest someone who has a dyslexic way of being would access all different skills, would not be constrained in a way to function in a certain way. So our learning in our school system is, you have to remember things to then take an exam to get A, B, C to pass. But in dyslexia brains, it's about how, where and how memory is held.
Mm.
So it's a lot to do with short-term memory. Not a lot is held in short-term memory.
Oh, okay.
And a lot is held in the other parts of the brain, more in the visual aspects, more in the sounds, and more in the mid to long term. It's not so transient. It's more about memory. Dyslexia, if you read up about it, it's more about memory. And so if I start thinking about that, it's like, okay, there's a lot that's superficial and transient, by attaching the idea that knowledge is through learn, a list of things to then pass an exam, rather than maybe knowledge is about something else and not learning a list of things in the short term, and then it gradually goes into the more long term. So I, in my conversations, I realized that people were functioning very differently. They were very linear, and I wasn't linear. I didn't understand that. I now do. So now with light language, goodness me. So I'm giving myself permission more and more to be in the flow, and allow other information and communication to come through. And because I'm dyslexic, it's very natural for me, because I'll go from A to Z. Now, if you can go from A to Z to B to M to N
And not be
already,
by that, not even notice that you've done that. So it's like your mind doesn't need this step, then this step, then this step. You're not even, you're just letting the information all come in, which touches all the different areas at one time. So
so I
it
do,
doesn't,
yeah.
but at the same token, I think if you're dyslexic, empath as well, you can become overloaded with information.
Mm.
So you have to dial things down so that you know how much you're using of your mind. Actually, that kind of goes with being in balance, the way I look at it. Like, are you thinking too much all the time, or are you allowing your brain a little rest and retrieval from life? Like,
I mean, I tried out different things. Because like I mentioned, child psychotherapy, social work. I used to go to court. I used to write big long documents. I used to hold big meetings and do all the minutes. I mean, even when I moved recently, I found a book that I had from art college. I couldn't understand a word what I was saying. I'd made notes in the book. It was a philosophy book, and I'm like, what on earth was I on about? I did try out different parts of my brain and really focus to see if I could function in a different way. So in my experience, I was able to move out of dyslexia. I was able to kind of say, this is how I want my mind to work. I want my mind to be able to function in this way. But what happened was I was able to do it for a while. And then I started having to wear colored tinted glasses. Because if you have dyslexia, you might then have a different issue. Being dyslexic, I can't remember the name of it, which often go hand in hand, because the words started jumping out and moving on the screen. And if you wear tinted colored glasses, it calms it all down. I don't get that now, because it was all an energetic issue. My system went into, I had sort of started having panic attacks, the mere idea of going into the office and sitting in front of my computer. So the words moving on the page was just my system going, no, you're not meant to be doing this. You can't, it's the energy is just too agitating for you. So I ended up, trying all these different things to calm my whole system down. And really it was the environment that was the issue. So now I don't need tinted glasses. I don't get overloaded. yes, I chose. I've moved to the country now.
Isn't that interesting? So your system in a certain environment, you're trying to manage being in that environment, but your system in total was in crisis in some ways, crying out to you to do something different. It wasn't functioning very well. You change the environment of where you put yourself and the expectations you have of you're not going in, and your whole system calms right down.
I had a wonderful teacher. She's retired now, and she was a supervisor social worker,
Mm-hmm.
and she wasn't doing healing. And she relays this, and she said um, she had ME. She suddenly had ME, so her system went into overload, and then she had to take time off.
Okay.
So when she went and started having these symptoms, getting exhausted,
Yeah.
very, there was building work happening in the building. And so then she went off and she actually got better. Then she came back to work and there was all this bangings and drilling still going on. And she went up to her colleagues and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe after all these months they're still doing the building work." They went, "What building work?" They finished it months ago. She said, "Can't you hear all this banging and drilling?" They went, "There's no banging or drilling. That stopped."
So
And then
what was she sensing?
it was her whole system
Her
going,
system went into high alert, remembering
yep,
what was happening there.
yeah. And it was like, yeah, like, get out, get out. So she then tuned in and said, okay, because what was keeping her there was her fear, attachment to needing regular financial income. I need my money, I need my bills paid. She did love her work, and I imagine she was awesome at it. She's an awesome lady. Um, and she went up and she said to her soul and her, so she's obviously was, interested in things to do that. That
Yeah,
says to me,
yeah, yeah.
and said, okay, I hear this. You're banging on my psyche. You're banging on my door. I need to leave for my life. It's threatening my life. Sometimes it has to. This is, I've had experiences where it's like this for me to listen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We don't really, things have to escalate to the point where we are forced to take an action that and go down a road that we really wouldn't pick if we didn't have to pick it.
So now I've had that happen a few times. Sometimes, I mean, there's not been there's nothing too horrendous, but they've kind of kept they've I'm stammering because they've been very impactful. um, and now I listen because I'm like, no, I don't want the huge banging on the door or the being woken up by whatever. It's like I'm listening. I'm listening.
So when you say, so this is important, I'm listening. We're here, we have ideas of what we want to do, we have goals, and then there is some other plan for what we're supposed to do. Like we think we're driving the car, we're making decisions, okay? When is it my personality or my ego, I don't know what you want to call it, my identity versus my soul wants me to do that. This is my soul's calling, my soul's purpose. This is the way you need to go. So all the doors on this side get shut. And if you're not listening, you're gonna slam into them head on. How do you how do you perceive this situation? Is it the world is not punitive, but certain doors get shut for a reason? Or why? Whose plan is this? Whose life is this? Like, do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. And there's different ways that I feel we can respond or I can respond depending on where we're resonating.
Right.
So I'm being feeling this very multidimensionally. I'm going on, how do I get definitely what you're saying. From a higher, bigger, wider, lighter resonance, it is all perfect. It is there's no separation between what what is our soul path, and what is it, our personality, and did I make the wrong decision, and was I not listening, and did I make the right or wrong turn, or do I know which part, or how can I know which part to, or which path to follow from a higher perspective, which we're part of, but not, we're in the human. It is all actually, there's no separation.
It's all fine. You'll get there eventually.
You will. So I feel it's worth to put that there, because in my experience, the more I've been on my journey, the more I'm realizing that it is, for me, very simple. When I said that the 3D is complexity because it's very dense, we talk about density when we talk about patriarchy, capitalism, because it's heavier vibration and everything gets twisted and distorted and complex, like codependency, enmeshment, tied up in knots. When you go to a higher vibration, it's more spacious, it's lighter. And people talk about synchronicities becoming more frequent. Everything becomes more graceful. So I had a communication, I have had lots of communication with the Venusians, Venus energy, which is about love. And they showed me, I think it was 8 months ago, this very, went boom with this image. And big tip, you know, when it comes from a higher resonance, when it just comes out of the blue, it just, something comes to you which you haven't been thinking about at all, and it's a nice idea or thought, you know, it's not, it's come from somewhere else in a way. So this dropped in and they showed me, when you are in density, when you're in, I call the lack resonance, nothing is good enough, you're not good enough, there's never going to be enough, because we're in that patriarchy, capitalism is about more, 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 more. Nothing is good enough, won't last long enough. Only a minority can have more than enough, but everyone else has got to be in lack. So I call that lack resonance. Now I've lost my train of thought. What was I going on about?
Oh, it was the blue. They tell you that you're going
Oh,
to.
yes, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so that lack resonance, you naturally want to hold on. So your hands will be like a clenched fist. Because when you're in lack, I'm going to hold on to this because I might not get anything that'll come my way again. I'm going to really hold on to this.
Yeah.
That hence jealousy, or, you know, I'm going to grab because, you know, I'm not good enough. So you're going to leave me. So I'm going to really keep hold of you.
You or me. Yes. Them or us. Right.
Control.
Yeah.
But so the way through, they're saying this, when you're in a higher vibration, you need to have your hand open to receive. Because if you're going like that, you're not going to be able to receive anything. And even if somebody comes with, oh, have this, you're so focused. You might be in agony because you're so clenched, but you can't receive it because you're like this. So just let go. But do we want to let go? Oh my God, that can be really hard. And that is the leap of faith, because it can go against everything we've been taught, everything we've been programmed from our parents, our family, society, culture. You've got to have a 9 to 5 job. What? I left my job. And one of my managers going, you've not got another job to go to. You've not got any savings. What are you doing? I said, this environment is so toxic. I am going to go really like insane. It was a really bad work situation. And I'm like, that's it. I've got to leave. I've tried to find
What
jobs.
are you sacrificing in the middle of making your decisions? Like, I had a client today. I said, where's your value? What do you value? What are you willing? You've sacrificed all of yourself and lost parts of yourself in order to fit into this environment. When you can make, because you're afraid of making that choice, you don't know that leap, you're afraid of making that choice. It's not even a real thing. You'd rather sacrifice. But did you realize at the time that you were losing parts of yourself? That this was like a really poor choice for you. No, I'm just going to keep sacrificing myself to keep things the way they are. No, I'll just keep dummying down and not paying attention and not, everything will be okay. But at the end of the day, when things become really painful, now oh shoot, I didn't I didn't value myself enough to say no more. I kept on putting up with, losing, almost failing to stand up for yourself, letting your life really become inconsequential in the big picture because you didn't want to make another move. You didn't want to hurt someone or you didn't want to change something like that fear. You just kind of adapted, put yourself last. And I'm like, that is not the way to move through and keep your soul with you because you're almost becoming a victim of your surroundings, a victim of other people. So, and unfortunately, fatigue, illness, all these other things, when we're not living, we're living in like half of a life instead
Yes,
of,
because sorry.
no, you're good. It's just, I personally have run into situations, but not like when I see it from other, I'm like, why would you put up with that? Like, how could you do that? Like, it's almost like not really seeing ourselves as deserving of
No.
something better.
Yeah, it's not loving ourselves, we're in lack. And it is what people call victim. And it's because we're holding unresolved trauma, which it goes back to what we were talking about before, the body, and goes back to the chakra, the root of everything. When we have unresolved trauma, we're in survival mode and not able to access thriving. So survival versus thriving. That's what dyslexia. So we're in fight, flight, or freeze. The freeze I was talking about with the numbing.
Yep.
We can go into fear. That's the flight.
Yep.
Or there's a lot of angry people out there, or resentful. And that's all triggered in the root because that's about home,
Yep.
body,
Yep.
health,
Yep.
family, income, money, food, the basic what we need to survive. And we know that we don't just need those elements to survive. We need love. And love is the heart and soul of everything. And so that's why we sometimes are pushed to the limit because we're so in survival mode. We're probably had the unconscious trauma. We're in the collective mind body trauma environment.
Because there's that layer. So there's a layer of that that affects all of us.
Yeah, we're in the collective. I mean, many of you probably would have experienced, and I think this is one of the, if there were many benefits. I remember with the lockdown, and I was one of the people that didn't. I had lots of guidance prior to it coming in, and that's a whole nother subject. So I had guidance about it, and I actually I had terrible fatigue for 2 weeks before it came in, and then they told me what was going to happen, and for me to not be distracted by it. And it was the galactic ones. It was an Arcturian energy that said it's a lot of it's going to be fake. So there is a disease, but it's fake. Don't believe what's going to come in. Don't believe it's fake. And I didn't quite understand it, and now I do. But anyway, I would go into the supermarket, and I would dread going because it would hold so much fear because people were in so much fear. It was held in the supermarket. I'm like, oh no, I need to get some food. I'd have to like take a deep breath. And then I was like, okay, you're here to assist. But I physically, it was like moving through, I don't know what.
Yes. A dense.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
So I think that would have woken up a lot of people because they would have felt it.
Yeah.
And of course, I got a lot of flack we had in the whole of British Isles, you had the choice to wear a mask or not. You didn't even need to wear a lanyard, but I ended up at one point wearing a lanyard saying, not mate, my freedom of choice. It was, so then I got lots of anger because I understood it was fear. I understood it was fear. And I'd be respectful if you need me to stand back, and so but I it's woken lots of people up this whole 2 years, woken up lots of people, and
Yeah.
yes.
So before, now you have me curious. Before, you're saying before COVID was announced, before there was a national pandemic that was even just talked about on the news, you got the information that this was going to be happening. So before collectively people would feel this fear, your body felt it.
Yeah, God.
So this is one of the challenges with empath awakening. If is everyone an empath? Is it just the empaths? Like, I see some people functioning and they don't miss a beat. They don't seem like they miss a beat. They seem like everything is perfectly fine. And then you have the empaths who can, even before something arrives on the scene, they can sense that something is arriving on the scene. How do you
Yeah.
how do you cope with that?
Well, I have two other experiences that relate to this, and I don't think it's totally being empath. Again, for me, I let go of the
Of the name
it's
of the
love the name,
okay.
because there's more going on than for me. Empath means being able to emotionally sense other people's emotions, and I'm can sense a lot more than just emotions.
Okay.
I've had premonition of events happening before, but I didn't know what was occurring. So I was lived in London near Hampstead Heath, walking into Hampstead Heath. I look and I see this tower in flames, this huge amount of smoke. And I remember thinking, I didn't remember there was a residential tower block there. But oh my God. And I thought, oh my God, loads of people are going to die. Oh my God, there's people. Oh my God, what's going to happen? And I thought it was happening there. I was confused because I didn't think there was a tower there. Then I thought, what am I meant to do about this? I'm not like a ambulance person, a fire person. And then I got pissed off. Then I got upset and a whole load of emotions about what am I meant to do with this? Another time I went on the heath and I could feel this lady was being raped. I didn't know where she was. I'm like, what am I meant to do about this? She's going to be or is being raped. I just knew. And then I realized that I'm being told this so I can send love. I can assist by sending love, like I do when I have worked with people one to one.
Assist indirectly
And
with
it's very direct. It's holding the energy, the awareness. Um, and it's powerful. When we bump into people that we've not met, or especially when we've not met, and we can feel their loving vibration, and it's like a balm, and that's an energy. And I've had so many experiences, like with angelic ones, like who've done amazing things in my life. Um, I've had
there.
incredible experiences that show me that there's we have an impact energetically, even when we're not in the same time zone, in a linear way, or physically. It took me a little while to believe that. So when the tower block thing, I went into work. I still had a part-time job in a school. I said, "Oh, did anyone know about it on the news? Because I don't watch the news about this tower block." And people, they went, "It wasn't in Archway, which is where I lived. It did happen, but it was in South London, and loads of people died." I'm like, oh. So I now am aware that if something big is going to happen, because I have that awareness, my soul lightly chose me to be there. though I didn't realize, my human didn't realize. So it's because everything's quantum, so we start looking at things not
So
in a linear.
you believe there's a reason for all of it. It's not some accident. It's not something
Oh,
done wrong. It's not here to penalize you. It's here to give you information because you, in your littleness, or you're bigger than you realize, and you can do
yeah,
something
it's
or you need to
beautiful.
prepare
Yeah,
for something, maybe not to change it, but to help it. Am I
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So, and I understand so your definition of empath, empath evolution, I've kind of broadened my definition of empath because it's feeling. Because of what is feeling? What am I feeling? I can feel people's thoughts, emotions, their spirituality. I can feel all of it. There's like, supposedly, if you really go down to the books out there, there's different kinds of empaths. Some are more communicative with animals, some are more nature empaths, some are more psychic empaths. But in total, everybody feels.
yeah,
So I see the empath as being gifted with the ability to support another person, support a space, because we can hold high vibrations. But if we don't care for ourselves and take that journey to self-healing and hold our own, be able to hold enough that we're stronger, because energy is magnetic. It's electric and magnetic. So if you hold pain in you, you will attract that same feeling in you because it needs to be healed. And you're actually in a great position to heal things because you do know what it's like.
yeah, yeah.
Some people, and should everybody know what it's like to love? I would imagine yes, but some people don't don't see the need or desire. Some of us are wired to love. Others are wired to just stay in, like it's almost like they don't have access to the same information that some have. So I see the empath as the old soul who's ready to open up and be a support to others. But and you're able to be non-judgmental and loving another person, but sometimes you can get lost in that trying to help another person. You can lose yourself in what's around you. So I always say it's a journey to self, it's a journey to who you are. Like if you don't really take the time to know who you are, which is a soul on a human mission here, you're going to discount everything and the magnitude of what you can do and what you're here doing because you're trying to live by the dysfunctional ideas. You're more equipped than you realize, but what's out there is dysfunctional. You have to know what's true and what's dysfunctional.
So if we do a fast forward in, some might say is going to happen or what we want to happen,
Right.
we would be in a world where we're all, for instance, if I use how you're relating to this, empathic.
Yes.
And then maybe then we would have no need for that word.
Maybe then we would understand that when we care for ourselves, we can care for when we understand what it's like to be a human in the journey that we're on. We stop projecting all of these negative things on other people because other people, all of them are going through their own situations to evolve. Like, so you stop judging even what seems like a bad situation because it's all divine in some way, good and bad. Yeah, there is bad out there. I know that, but it's how much energy you're going to give to that versus to what we are, what you are, what you personify. Who's the driver? Is the driver love, or is the driver to spotlight all the things that are bad around you? So it's about being open, being fluid, loving, but knowing who you are first. The love starts here, and then you know how to love out here without holding on and tightly owning anything because everything is changing around you at any given point in time. People are all evolving. you're evolving. And what is love? Love is allowing people to do what they need to do to learn. So if somebody does something that seems so off, but maybe they need to do that to get to the next level. Like I told you, my client, for many years, 17 years, it's almost like self punishment. She's hurt herself by doing this. She limited herself. She put herself in a box. She stayed there. Why would you martyr yourself for another person? Oh, because that's what she thought the right thing was to do, because that's what she thought she needed to do, because she didn't know at the time she was doing it that she was hurting herself. We never do until the moment comes that I'm in so much pain. I got to do something about this. This is like life or death. I got to do something. So it's like, as smart as what we can be, sometimes we create these lives that keep us really stuck and we don't think we have choices, but we always have a choice. We just don't we don't want to do that choice. So we bend and we twist and we close and we put a wall and we do all these things. But what we're supposed to do is step into the fire a little bit in faith, step into that next stage instead of being worried about it and whatnot. But again, when you have trauma in your past, there are so many things that you don't see. You're surviving, you don't see it. But knowing that the world, our whole world, the way that we've approached spirituality and evolving and consciousness is on such a great trajectory right now, not covered by mass media, not publicized, but happening beneath the surface. So many of us are diligently lifting every rock to try and be the best version of an embodiment that we can be. So I think collectively, there's going to be an upswing. Right now, we're looking at, but we have to be aware of to hold that light. It's like you're a candle. And that candle, if there can be blown out, if you don't take care of that candle, your light has to be strong, stronger, strongest. And then you can really support and help others if that is what you want to do with your life. Right. So, yeah. Oh my gosh, it's been so much fun, Zahara. Thank you. Um, is there anything I missed? Is there anything you want to share with the audience as they're listening to this? Oh, hello.
Obviously, she's like, that was divine timing.
Yes, it was. It
She
reminds
keeps
me.
pulling. She's been pulling on my. I've been going like this, just in case anybody wondering what I'm doing, why I'm going like that, because she's been sitting on my wire.
Our dog, our dog Lucky was a Jack Russell. She died at
Oh,
14 a couple years ago, and
oh,
your dog
wow.
is just so nice and comfy there. No need to move.
No, yeah, she's a bit of a cuddle bug. Um, is Yeah, beautiful being in space and being with you're resonating, you perceiving very differently from me, and I've been and I feel that's very important. We can get or I can, and maybe others can, get used to resonating being with others who have an agreement or speak the same language, the same lingo, same phraseology, the same understanding. And it can, it for me, it's goes back to my daily, it's my practice, which is spiritual, which is everything I do is, am I able to hear what this person's experience is without jumping in and can I observe, can I feel, can I sense, or this is how they're perceiving it, and allow that to be, and it's funny, so allow that, like you were talking about the client, allow their journey to, there's no allowing, it is going to be. The allowing is allowing ourselves to acknowledge what is occurring And when we allow ourselves to acknowledge what is, we can then relax.
Well,
There's, we move out of the judgment comparison, So I was aware of that with me, with you were using phrases and your experiences and feeling your energy, very different to where I'm at. There's overlaps, but there's difference. And for me, for us to move forward as together in humanity, is about, can we, just be and listen to somebody else's different, diverse experience, because it's all needed. That's coming out of the patriarchy, which says we all have to be in agreement and pass the same exam and say the same thing. But can we, it's a different way of being. It's, you are resonating where you are. Oh, there's some overlaps, and I might I don't think and feel of it like that. Oh, that's interesting. How is that where I am? And I'll just be with that. Oh, I'll just be with that.
Well, and the hard part, which we talked about before the interview, is that we are limited to words. In addition to that, though, if you're empathic and open, you can sense what's behind the words. You can sense if there's mischief, comparison, judgment, so much more, that I'm reading the energy of what somebody says and how they say it. And I think definitions can be hard and labels can be hard. We've all constructed our lives in our mind based on, if someone calls you bipolar, I should be offended. You know what I mean? Whereas my definition of bipolar might be different than how somebody else sees bipolar, right? But who's to say? Because our minds are all processing different. Like my exposure is this, your exposure is that. So we have a different level of understanding of what things are. And when you explain dyslexia, I'm like, oh, I had never heard said like that before. That's really cool. But you're speaking from your personal experience and from being an educated woman who has studied this and looked at it. So
yeah, and experienced it.
Oh yeah, it matters, because once you experience it, now it's not hypotheses. It's not something you're reading in a book. It's something you've lived through and moved through to become, to manage, basically. So managing.
So for where I'm resonating, I'm in a place of wanting to let go of all labels, all that at a time at times have been really useful. And there's this, for me, there's a place in the awakening ascension process where
that
we become detached. So that part of what maybe you would describe as, the empath who starts, turning on, being sensitive. You could say that's needed in one way. I feel it's our natural way of being, and like I've said, but in the journey for humanity, we need to learn to detach, because we've been enmeshed. So the journey of, you could say, an empath is to learn compassionate, I would call it compassionate detachment.
Yeah.
So you become more and more the observer of all your experience, which is what I was describing before. Yeah. And then the emotions don't overwhelm you, the feelings, the psychic whatnots, whatever information you're getting. You're then able to discern clearly, what is this information? Where does it come from? Do I need to have more information on that? For instance, I got during my I'll do a quick story. I was a healing course, which was interesting, because I was doing stuff with my clients, guinea pigs, whatever. It's not guinea pigs, but I had to have case studies. That's it, case studies. Maybe they were guinea pigs. Case studies. Poor guinea pigs. Case studies. And it was like I was time traveling, and goodness knows, I was doing a lot of things that were like, I'd go to my supervisor and she was like, "You're working at an advanced level. Do you realize?" And I'm like, "No, it's just happening." She goes, "No, no, you just keep doing what you're doing. Then you go into college and you tick the boxes." I'm like, "What?" That was so she was navigating in her own way. Hopefully,
Wait,
I'm not going to get her into
what does that
trouble.
mean? Kick the boxes. What does that mean?
Well, it meant when I would go into the class, they were saying, "This is your chakra. Put your hand 4 inches above the chakra." I'm time traveling. I'm like, what are they talking about? Why are they having to have the hand 4 inches above the chakra? I'm doing this, that, and the other, and I'm like, so I was quiet. I ticked the box by being quiet. I'm like,
Oh, that's what that means. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just get
So
the certificate. I'm like,
that
I
is
said to her,
so,
"Do I need the certificate? I don't think I need the certificate." She said, "There's a
no,
reason why you're here."
there is. There is. There's always a reason. And I've had plenty of friends now that, I think there was a stage where we all took a lot of courses where you don't think you know, and then you become a little bit more confident that you do know and you can get your own answers. But sometimes we go places and attend certain things just to teach us or to show us that we don't need or want
No.
that.
Mm,
Or
mm,
it could be you went there because you were holding space and teaching somebody else something that you
mm.
didn't even know you were there for, because the service is we serve others. Sometimes others serve us.
I
Like
think it's always the same. I think with it's
always,
reciprocal.
always both ways.
Always, always, because it is. It's not linear. It's not one direction. Yes, we have roles, and we can be. I do healing, and I do healing, and I'm there holding the space. That's my role. I'm in service, and I am receiving at the same time. God, I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
And also because I work very much, I have a whole vast toolkit that's accumulated in this lifetime and access to past lifetime, but they also drop new things in all the time for the person. And it's only through me being of service to somebody else that they will then go, "Okay, you both of you need this new modality, this new galactic light technology or whatever. So then both of you now can go away and ripple it out or do whatever you do." But also by giving, I'm receiving. It's wonderful.
It is.
You receive so much more when you give, and that's abundance. It's not
When
linear.
you
It's
give, let me paraphrase that. You receive, well, interpret it based on my when you do something and you do it without expectation and you just let it be, so much happens with both people. When you do it expecting something, it kind of
limits it.
shrinks along the way, and then you really have a hard time with what you learned. Where did you serve? How did it serve? How did it work? But you learned when you went to these things that you really didn't, that really wasn't the right place for you.
It was. I mean, I had a recent experience again. My learning is always slightly different. I had it
Okay.
again recently, but it was. I mean, I learned what I knew. I didn't realize I knew so
Ah,
much,
ah,
and I needed to have that anchored in and embodied. I also needed to know where I was in relation to others.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so there was
It
stuff that
wasn't so
came
it
in
wasn't a
so
it
easily.
wasn't a failing. There was something that you took away. So even in looking at someone's life and the choices that we've made or haven't made, if you really can look at what you learned from each, even though it was a hard experience, you being born in a traumatized family, there was a payoff to everything that sculpted you into the
Yeah.
person that you are today.
Almost definitely. My gosh, I have such a wealth of experience. I
Yeah.
can pretty much relate to every freaking trauma there is. I laugh now, but I don't know why I laugh. But yeah, yeah. I certainly, I know, I learned a lot about humanity.
It
Um,
makes it so that life becomes this living thing, this learning and living and being and embodying. So it's actually so amazing to get older And to have that wherewithal, instead of looking at yourself as, oh, I'm getting older, I'm slowing down. Oh, no, no, no. There's still a lot of vitality behind what you do and how you do it, and a lot of class that comes with it, which when you were younger, you may not have even thought of as a thing, or, as a desire of yours. As it's almost like savoring that glass of wine. You can savor it. Like, what you're looking for, what it's like to have a good glass of wine. And I don't know if that's a good example for you, but for me, it's like, not that I'm in love with wine, but I'm just saying the quality of the way that I want to live and what is in front of me.
Maturity.
Yeah,
Mature. That's the word, isn't it?
Such a beautiful thing, even with the hardships that sometimes you witness and the imperfections that are there. They're perceptions of imperfection, but everyone's here to learn. So no one's going to have a perfect life. And if you have a perfect life, let me tell you, it's a temporary, transient thing, because you're not meant to stagnate. You're meant to continue to grow. And if you can truly listen and truly be at one with yourself, you're not in fear. You can bend and become that next version. But if you get really like attached to who
Rigid.
you are, yeah, then you're going to break unless you learn to bend and create something different.
Yeah. Very beautiful. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to bring this to a close. I thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you.
If you guys want to learn more or contact Zahara, it's zaharacelestial.com.
Yeah, my name.
Yes. So I will see all of you very soon. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Thank you.